Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Business of Aesthetics Expert discussion. Originally, we planned as a panel discussion, but today we are thrilled to turn this into a more professional, more personal fireside chat. So this is an exclusive opportunity to learn directly from one of the most respected voices in aesthetic dermatology. So let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Bruce Katz. Thank you for being here, Doctor.
Thank you, Jay. It's a pleasure.
Tonight, we are diving into the topic that touches every successful aesthetic practice. It's about personal branding and thought leadership for aesthetic providers. We will be talking about building authority, trust, and visibility in a competitive market. So I'm Che, and I will be your host for tonight's event. Before we dive into tonight's panel, let me ask you something. When someone in your area searches online for the aesthetic treatments you offer, is your practice the one they see first? Or is it your competitor? This is a challenge many aesthetic practice owners face. So you might deliver incredible results, but if you are not visible online, you are leaving a steady flow of high value patients untapped. So the good news is there is a clear way forward. So stick with us until the very end of tonight's session because we have something special lined up that will help you put that strategy into action and dramatically boost your online presence. Now, let's meet our incredible speaker who will be sharing his wisdom with us tonight. We're delighted to welcome Dr. Bruce Katz. He is a renowned dermatologist, clinical professor of dermatology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and founder of the Jua Skin and Laser Center in New York. A pioneer in cosmetic dermatology, Dr. Katz has led groundbreaking work in laser treatments, body contouring, and minimally invasive procedures. He previously served as director of the cosmetic surgery and laser clinics at Mount Sinai Hospital and is widely published into top medical journals. He has been repeatedly named as Castle Connolly New York Magazine as one of the best doctors in New York and is a leading innovator of advanced laser technology and cosmetic procedures. So, welcome to the panel, Dr. Katz.
Thank you, Jay. You're very kind.
I
Appreciate
want
the
to
introduction.
say thank you so much for being here. So, we're truly grateful that you made this time to be here. So, your presence is what makes this conversation powerful. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, so tonight we will be exploring how to build a strong personal brand that reflects your unique voice and values, and also how to use digital platforms to expand your reach and authority, and how to earn trust through authentic thought leadership. And finally, we will be talking about how we can apply long term branding strategies to stay visible and make a lasting impact in your career. So remember, this is not just us talking to you. We want you in the conversation as well. So if you have any questions, drop in the chat. I try my best to get that questions live to our doctor. All right, having said that all, let's get started. Let's start right at the foundation, doctor. Personal brand identity. Every provider has technical skills. But what really makes a name stand out is the feeling patients associated with it. The story, the voice, the values behind it. And in a space as crowded as aesthetics, that's not easy to define, right? So, Dr. Katz,
Mhm.
you've done that masterfully over the years. What would you say to practitioners trying to carve out their own authentic brand?
Well, I think, the first thing is you have to treat your practice like a service. That's really incredibly important, particularly if you're in cosmetics, cosmetic dermatology, cosmetic surgery. Um, I always tell my staff we treat patients like a high-end hotel would. You greet them when they come in the front door, introduce yourself. Don't just say, please come into the hallway. and come back to the exam room, say who you are. You say welcome. You want to make them feel almost like they're coming to family. I think that's very important, particularly for cosmetic practices, but I think for any medical endeavor that really opens people up and relaxes them because everyone's, concerned, anxious when they come in to see a doctor and for any medical reason, whether it's cosmetic or otherwise. I think also it's important to set a certain tone in your practice. Have consistent colors. If you do any type of literature, make sure that you have specific colors that identify your practice. Have a logo. Again, these are all branding techniques. When I started my practice, I told the branding company that I worked with I was doing aesthetic medicine. I've done that right from the beginning for the last 38 years. So I wanted a name and I wanted the logo appearance to sort of transmit that cosmetic feel. And they came up with 100 different names. And one name that stood out to me was the word juvenescent. But I like to just shorten it by saying Juva. Well, what do you think the meaning of juvenescent is? But it turns out the word juvenescent means growing younger. And that's basically what we want our patients to be doing. That's what they want to be doing. They want to look like a better version of themselves, a younger version. They don't want to look different. I think, patients who come to me and really want to look different, I really say, no, I can't help you. But, to make them look like a better version of themselves. And the word juva really transmit that connotation and then having, literature, having all your letterheads and anything in your office should transmit the colors and the motif of your practice. So I think that's a very important way to start in terms of setting up a brand. And then also, I think it's very important that you want to stand out. Like you mentioned, Shay, our industry is very competitive. It's gotten more and more competitive over the years. I mean, there are med spas, there are other specialties in dermatology, in other fields such as dentistry, even ophthalmology, optometry. They all want to do cosmetics. So you really want to create something in your practice that is different from everyone else. And it takes a while. It's not an easy thing to do. And I decided that I wanted to be known for doing research in the cosmetic field. And that was when I first started out, that was a very young field. There wasn't a lot of research being done in cosmetics because a lot of my colleagues used to say, well, that's not serious medicine, so why are you even bothering? Well, today, most of my colleagues want to be doing what we are doing, you know? So I think it's important that you create something that stands out and is different, whether, you want to specialize in lasers or body contouring or facial filling and toxins, something that, makes your practice unique. Unique is really important because, there are people out there who do general aesthetic dermatology, and there's nothing necessarily that stands out uh, with them compared to their colleagues. So I decided I wanted to do research. There are three big benefits to doing research in cosmetic dermatology. Number one, you get to pick different research studies that you like and find interesting. And when you do that, often those are brand new approaches to technology, whether it's a new toxin, whether it's a new filler, whether it's a new laser or a new body contouring treatment for tightening of the skin, treating cellulite, fat reduction, or other types of muscle toning, which is obviously one of the newest areas in body contouring. So, I decided to focus on research. And so the first thing is to find a study that you think is unique. And the big benefit there is that if it does turn out to be workable and it gets FDA approval, you're first to market. So that's really good for your practice because then you have something in your practice that stands out compared to your competitors. That's number two. And number three, which is the biggest bonus of all, I don't really treat that as my major reason for doing research, but I realized, pretty quickly that allows me to, when the media calls, to tell them about the newest thing, the newest cutting edge. And that's even bigger for your practice because then the word gets out, whether it's on social media, whether it's in magazines, whether it's in newspapers, on TV. I mean, that really stands out because now not only were you doing research on new things, not only were you first to market in your area with this new technology, you're also now the media's darling, as it were, quote unquote, because you can give them the newest thing. And particularly magazines or social media, they're always looking what we call feed the beast. And feeding the beast means they need new stories all the time, right? I mean, that's their business, looking for new stories. And if you can become known to them for giving them the latest things and the newest research, and it all has to be authentic. It cannot be some silly thing that really doesn't work, but sounds different. You want to make sure that when you go to the media and any research that you've done, first of all, is top end research. It's real medicine, it's real research, and it's also becomes FDA approved. And then the media really will continue to go to you in the future. And what I was very lucky about in my career is that not only did I get to be known in the media for having the new things to give them stories about, I also got to be known in the research industry, in the CROs, the contract research organizations, in the sponsors, the companies that were coming out with these new devices or new products, and they wanted us to do the studies, and they picked us. So it's a double sort of a double deal here because you then become a go-to research center for sponsors and CROs, and then you also become a go-to center for the media to keep asking you about the latest things. And I realized that early on, and that was a great formula. And I've done that for the last 38 years. And it's also allowed me to, be on the cutting edge most of the time because I'm always getting the newest devices and lasers. I think at last count, we have about 50 odd lasers and energy-based devices in our practice. And that really, and then patients, when they come in and see all this technology, they say, wow, they probably know what they're doing. Or at least I think they hope we know what we're doing. And obviously, you have to be sure that you do. And I should have mentioned the first thing is making sure that you're good at what you're doing. And I always, when people ask me, well, what kind of laser, when, I teach residents and fellows at Mount Sinai Hospital, they ask me, well, Dr. Katz, what is the best laser for me to start with when I go out in my practice? I always say, whatever you decide is the best device, first of all, make sure it's appropriate for your clientele. If you have a fair skin population or a darker skin population or a mix, younger people versus older people. So you know that what that device you're bringing into your practice is going to be used regularly. It's not just going to sit there and become a clothes hanger for your coat. So that's also important and become really good at it. Start with one at a time and become an expert because you don't want to create problems for your patients and you don't want to have side effects. That's really important. So I think that's typically what I realized was a great formula for branding my practice. And we got to be known nationally and then internationally as well.
Amazing. That reminds me of the quote. You should know something about everything and everything about something, right? You need
That's
to
right.
you need to be
That's
better
very
at.
true.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I'd like to
Yeah.
sum up what you mentioned, Doctor, because they're like really, really important tips for people, for someone, if there's anyone who's early in their career, who's trying to start defining their identity. You need to treat your practice like a service. That is really, really important. And also, you need to have a logo. You need to have a color palette. You need to brand yourself around these things. And also, you need to you need to do something unique. You need to do something you stand out from other your competitors. And also, one main thing, the final main thing that you mentioned was get your hands on research because that gives you so many benefits. It gives you visibility, it gives you publicity, and all of that. All right. I have one question regarding this, doctor. Have you seen common mistakes that providers make when they try to brand themselves maybe too early or too broadly?
Well, like I said, you want to brand yourself in a way that fits your practice, your clientele, your locale. Um, so it all, sort of blends in well. I think, you know, it's probably best to start early
Okay.
because this way, right out of the gate, people will know that this is when they see something on TikTok or on Instagram, your colors are there. It's always consistent. So they will know, even if they're just, swiping through different things, if they come across something that looks like the colors that they're aware of because they go to your practice, they go, oh, wait a minute, Dr. Katz has something new about to discuss. And always, we're doing videos of procedures, we're putting them on social media. And one other point I should make that really, in addition to doing research and getting your stories into the media, which really helps the credibility of your practice, it also allows you to be asked to lecture at meetings. That's another important aspect of, sort of branding your practice because, if you're invited to major national meetings or international meetings, that gives you credibility, for your patients. And then they see it on social media that you're lecturing at the ASDS meeting or the American Academy of Dermatology or a meeting in Monte Carlo at the anti-aging meeting or IMCAS in Paris, which is all these meetings that I typically go to. Um, that also adds credibility because people say, wait a minute, if he's asked to teach other doctors at these national and international meetings, he or she must know what he or she is doing. So I think that's really important.
Right, right. This is wonderful. All
You
right,
have to
doctor.
excuse my hoarse voice, sorry.
That is
You have
that
to
is
excuse my hoarse voice.
totally fine. You sound perfect. All right, doctor. So once the identity is clear, the next challenge is visibility, something which I touched upon slightly, especially in this digital world, right? Many providers struggle with finding that balance between sharing expertise and sounding salesy, right? You manage to do both beautifully, staying scientific yet accessible. So, Doctor, I would like to ask from you, what's your advice on using digital platforms effectively to build maybe authority while keeping authenticity intact?
Well, I think, that's a pretty simple answer to that. I think in order to avoid looking too, salesy or trying to look like you're promoting yourself, I think just teaching, through videos, through didactic talks, um, either of those modalities really gives you credibility without making you sound like a salesperson. So, I always feel it's like a public service. I'm trying to teach people about what's the best way to do this filler, or what's the best way to have this toxin injected, or laser treatment, or body contouring. And then, it also educates people about what's new in the field. And if you take that approach, I think that gives the authenticity without making people feel like you're just trying to promote yourself and you're just promoting your ego. I think that's a dead giveaway and that's a turnoff for a lot of people also. And I think, just trying to educate through, social media is the best approach. And then you also, want to make sure people understand, who you are. You want to include your email, your website, your phone number if you're so inclined for the office, which also allows people to come in and offer them the ability to question you, send questions in, or go to the website and check the answers. and you can direct them to that within that educational experience. So now they're exposed to your entire practice. If they go to your website or more Instagram postings that you've done, education, I think, is the key there.
All right, so I have a question regarding that, Doctor. What would you say to someone who's hesitant to publish or speak because they feel they're not expert enough yet?
Very simple, Jay. Get to be expert. You
Right,
have to know what you're talking about. The worst thing you can possibly do that really will discredit you is to come across like you know something when you don't really know it. Because someone asks you a question and you can't answer it, it shows right away that you really haven't done your homework.
right,
So I think you have to become an expert or at least, really knowledgeable about something before you go out and try to promote it or, discuss it or educate about it or present it or teach it because, that can really hurt your reputation. And also, I think an important thing is that even if, if you're an expert, someone may ask you a question and you may not know the answer. Be honest about the fact you can say, well, I don't really know. I haven't really explored that, but I think that's a good question. And I'm going to go home and look into that because that's something that really I haven't come across. So be honest. If you can't answer something, don't try to, make up an answer that doesn't make sense. Admit you don't. And I think that's really important too. Another point I think I should make when you're seeing patients, I think a big mistake a lot of doctors make, when patients come in asking to be different or looking weird, or wanting to do something you don't think is appropriate, you have to learn to say no. That's really important because then they'll respect you when you tell them this is not something that's appropriate.
right. That is very true. That credibility can make all the difference. And since we spoke about sharing your expertise, educating the community, and all of that, do you think sharing failures or challenges that you had to face publicly helps humanize providers, or does that risk credibility?
No, I think it definitely is an important thing to do because you're being honest, you're being, forthright about your own limitations, and we all, have limitations, however expert, we can be. And, I get questions all the time when I'm teaching, and, residents often help me. I find the great thing about teaching also is another aspect that can help your brand is that you learn a lot in the process because, my fellows or my residents will sometimes ask me something and I don't know the answer to it. And I'll say, that's a great question. I haven't thought about that. Let's try to figure it out. So I think that, like you say, humanizes people and, makes you seem more real to whatever audience you're addressing. And I think that helps your credibility too.
Right. That is very true. I think trust and transparency and honesty, that are really the currency of aesthetics, right? Um, all right, doctor. Have you noticed, since we talked about like using social media to educate people, educate the community and all of that, have you noticed any recent shifts in what audience respond to most? Maybe shorter videos, podcast style education, or trend-driven content? Any sort of like trendy modes.
Means things that are changing or something that's new that hasn't been addressed.
Definitely, yes. Any
Yeah.
recent shifts that the audience respond to most that you have noticed?
Well, I think, if you have the time, and this does require a lot of time, we see the popularity of podcasts getting greater and greater all the time. Some doctors are doing their own podcasts. It is a time commitment, but you can start trying to do that. What we also do in our practice is we have what we call Juva chats. Juva chats, name of our practice. And once a month, we invite patients in and we'll talk about a particular subject. And we'll serve them, a little bit of wine or, wine and cheese. And usually we'll get 30 or 40 people in the evening. And we'll present one of the newest topics that we're working on, one of the newest technologies and go over it with them. This actually gives them like a free consultation. And very often what happens at the end, people are asking you about, well, would this work for me? And let me show you this thing, or how can this help me? Which also brings in new patients. So yes, encourage them to bring their friends and family as well. And I think that's a great educational experience, but it also helps your practice grow.
Right, right. Amazing.
So I see that as well. That's becoming more and more popular too. By bringing people into your office, inviting them to come for free, you know, we call them educational experiences or chats.
Right. Thank you, doctor.
Hmm.
All right. You've been at the forefront of dermatology for decades, and your career itself is a masterclass, staying relevant in a rapidly evolving field. Okay. So, from technology to patient expectations, so much has changed. Doctor, I'd like to ask from you, what has helped you remain visible and influential through all these shifts? And what can emerging aesthetic professionals learn from that longevity?
That's a good question, Shay. And what I found actually accidentally is to go to meetings, whether it be national, local meetings, regional meetings, national meetings. I think even more important is to go to international meetings because, I go to, 6, 7, 8 meetings a year. And I'm trying to cut back because, obviously it cuts out time from your practice, but you can learn so much from other colleagues. And I find that particularly when I go to like many meetings in Europe or South America or China or Japan, where I've lectured there, but also I've learned a lot from my colleagues there. And you can learn about new approaches to things, um, how things are being done in that country where it hasn't been done in the US. So that also keeps you current. It allows you to bring back new technologies. I'll give you a perfect example. I was I was lecturing in Italy about 20 years ago. And I heard, and I used to do a lot, well, I still do, but I used to do a lot of traditional liposuction where, working with a hollow tube, you'd suck out fat. But the problem was that when you sucked out fat, just with the old traditional approach, you can take away the fat, but you end up with loose skin. It's sort of like a deflated balloon. If you took away someone's big abdomen or big hips or thighs, you take away the fat, but then the loose skin there. And that was always a problem. What we used to say is that, you'll look, once we do the procedure, you'll look better with clothes, but you may look worse without clothes because you'll have looser skin. And then, so sort of the big challenge was to find a way to tighten the skin after doing lipo or within the same procedure. And, I was thinking about that and I was at this meeting in Italy and I heard that there was a new device called Smart Lipo that a doctor just north of Firenze, of Florence, was doing. And I decided I was going to go and spend a few days with him and see how he used it. Was a laser that worked under the skin, not only to melt the fat, but he didn't realize that it could also tighten the skin. But I did a lot of laser work. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, not only would this melt the fat, which it worked very efficiently at, but this might tighten the skin. I wasn't sure. And then I heard a doctor in Brazil also was working on the technology. It hadn't been done at all in the States yet. So I went there and worked with this doctor in Brazil as well. And he also used it to take away fat, but didn't realize that it actually could tighten the skin. So when I got back to New York, I convinced the laser company that I had worked with to try to license this technology from this Italian company. Eventually, that was sort of like, you know, the um, the solution to the problem for the loose skin, because now we could not only melt the fat, we can tighten the skin at the same time. And that took off. I mean, I had a story in People magazine about that. And it was, I had patients coming from all over the world. Once the story got out, and I was invited for TV stories, New York Times. How did I get to that point? I just stumbled across it at an international meeting in Italy. So, going to meetings, you never know what you can find, um, and what new things you may be exposed to. So I think that's very valuable. I think that's really allowed me to always stay on the cutting edge of all the new technologies. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them that I felt were appropriate for my practice. And I have to admit, also, there were some technologies that I thought would be a big deal, and it turned out not to be. And they just crashed and burned. But you got to take risks also. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I've had failures where I worked on something or I've done a research project on a new device or a new filler or something that I thought would be the next big thing, the new thing. Turned out it wasn't. But hey, you got to take risks. That's also a big important part of your practice. Take risks, not on patients. I'm not talking about doing risky procedures that you're not good at, but take risks about exploring new things. And sometimes you may find your own smart lipo um, coming back with you.
Right. Amazing. If you need to be updated, if you need to be if you need to be, yes, simply updated, you need to associate people who are updated here, who are expert in this industry. And also, as it's a good reminder that you need to take risks, you need to explore things, you need to experiment on things, not on patients, but on
Not on
maybe
purpose, right? Exactly.
but
Mhm.
maybe new technology, maybe new way of marketing, new way of publishing, new way of educating people. So you need to try out new things, explore new things. That comes with a risk. Everything comes with a risk. So since you were talking about staying on top of the new trends, going to meetings, conferences, associating people, this is a side question, doctor. How would you balance this being on top of the new trends and top of the subject? And how do you balance your personal life as well?
Well, I think that's also a good question, Shay. And, you always have to take time out to relax and think about new things, um, or just not think about anything related to your practice. But I've always made a point to take vacations regularly, spend time with my family, come home every night. I mean, some nights, if I was working on a lecture or I had to, finish off a research study that I was publishing, um, I had to work, I put in the time, but, I always had free weekends with my family and I took them on vacations and I spent time with my kids. So I think that's really important too. And that also gives your brain time to relax, be exposed to other things. And then, I'm a serious believer in, you may have a question or an issue, or you're trying to figure out something new in your practice. But, when you go off and do something completely unrelated, your subconscious is still possibly working on it. And I found that very often when I get back to my office, I said, wait a minute. I was thinking about that when I was here 2 weeks ago, but now, wait a minute, I think I have a better answer. And it's because I took a fresh approach. I just stopped thinking about it and put it aside. But my subconscious mind had apparently been working at it behind the scenes.
Right. That is so true. You need to have some time for yourself as well, for your family. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
the balance comes from that. Amazing. All right, doctor. We are going to shift into a different topic now. Technology and innovations. We slightly touched that as well. So, innovation has always been at the heart of your work, right? From new laser technologies to advanced body contouring techniques, whatnot. But with every innovation comes the challenge of keeping it relatable, right? Patients want expertise, but they also want connection. So, Doctor, how do you personally balance being scientific innovator with maintaining that approachable human side of the brand?
Well, it goes back to what I said at the beginning, treating your practice like a service industry. You know, for example, a lot of doctors walk into an exam room, see a patient, and they'll say, what is your problem? I always walk into an exam room, I shake their hand, I introduce myself, and I say, how can I help you? Not what is your problem? Because, people, you start asking, about a problem, and people, find, first of all, they feel, well, it's not really a problem. I'm interested in improving my lips or, like improving my cheeks. It's not a problem, but it's something I'm interested in improving. So you don't want to create the impression that whatever they're going to say next was a problem. So asking them how you can help them opens up a conversation and see where it goes. And let people, talk. Let them explain what's going on. Don't interrupt. Give them some time. I always feel that even though I may spend 10 minutes with a patient, I want to walk out and that patient felt that I was there for an hour. So I don't want them to feel I was rushing them. I want them to feel that I gave them all the time in the world, but also, sort of phrase it in a way that makes it succinct and answers their questions and also allows you to move on to the next patient because obviously you don't want to keep patients waiting.
Right, right. All right, that very true. Since we started talking about technology, we have gotten a question from Tanya. Um, he is asking for thoughts on plasma technology, Neogen, PSR. Would you like to answer that right now?
What is the technology again?
Thoughts on plasma technology, Neogen, PSR.
Well, I've had experience with plasma technology, and that's been done before. And, I've tried it. I've had devices in my office, and I just haven't felt that it really added a lot of value to my practice. Perhaps in other practices it may. It's very superficial. It's used mostly for resurfacing the skin, um, treating acne scars, wrinkles, irregularities, or textural changes. Maybe it improves texture. But at least the plasma technologies that I've worked with really haven't done an awful lot. Very modest benefits at best.
Right, right. Okay, okay. I hope
I
Tanya,
should I
you.
should also add the fact that maybe newer ones have come out that I'm not aware of that might be more effective. So I shouldn't say categorically that all of them are the same. But I tested a device about 2 years ago. I just didn't find it, particularly effective.
Right. Thank you for that genuine answer, doctor. So, do you ever find patients intimidated by technology or innovation? And how do you bridge that gap?
Well, that happens quite often because people aren't necessarily familiar with the device that you're
Mm.
suggesting to them. So you want to explain how it works. You
Yeah, I
want
would
to
like to
give
know
them,
how do you simplify those complex science then if there's that bridge,
well,
gap to
you got to
bridge.
speak in layman's terms. You can't go on, using scientific terms and, scientific mumbo jumbo that people are not going to understand. You have to explain it like you're explaining it to a child. Not that you're treating your patient like a child, but so that, there's no question that they understand um, how it works, why it's appropriate for them, what the side effects are, what other technologies might do also that may not work as well. And then there's also, the other flip side of that is that people come in telling you they want a certain technology. They're not intimidated. They think they know what this device is because they've read about it or seen it on TV or on social media. They say, Doc, I want Fraxel for this. Turns out it's not the right device for them. And you have to sit down and explain to them, I have all the devices. I say I can use it for you, but you're going to be wasting your money. You're going to be coming in, spending a lot of time, and then at the end of the day, you're not going to see results. But I do have something else that I think would work for you and explain why that is different and why that would work. But, that's often, I don't see that often, but I think that is the flip side of that equation where people come in not intimidated, but telling you what they want. And you have to explain why it may not be the case. And don't let them convince you to use it because then you're going to end up with someone who's unhappy. I always feel that if I can't deliver results, so I can't really sort of, you know, under promise and over deliver, quote unquote, famous expression. If I can't do that for my patients, I will tell them, I can't help them. And then you have the other type of patient who'll come in and say, doc, I want this procedure. And you say it's not for them. And they say, well, please, let's do it. And you say, no, I really don't think so. And they'll continue to persist. And then they'll go back and forth. And it's like an argument back and forth. What I learned early on, the best way to end that conversation is to say, I don't have the skills to do what you want me to do. So I can try to refer you to someone else, but I think you have to find someone else to do this because I cannot help you. And I think anyone in their right mind would not want a doctor performing a procedure on them when they're telling you they don't have the skills to do it. That's a good way to exit that difficult conversation.
Right. I think if you build, if you brand yourself in a proper way, if you build that rapport, if you build that trust from your patients or clients,
Mhm.
even though there are so many information out there that they can find out, they will come to you for advice and they will trust you, right?
Hmm. Oh
Mm,
yeah,
They will end
I
up.
think that's really important. Absolutely. And, word of mouth is still a big part of it. I mean, everyone thinks that a lot of practitioners think the only way to get word out is by social media or, doing other things. But word of mouth is really important too. So if you make your patients happy, um, they'll come and recommend family, their friends. I've had, patients coming in to see me from all parts of the world. Sometimes just because a friend of theirs or a family member told them about our practice, and they decided to make the trip to New York. So word of mouth still is really important. It's really important, again, to treat your patients really well, give them top-notch service. And not only you have to make sure your staff is doing that. I think it's very important to monitor your staff, get feedback, ask your patients to fill out questionnaires at the end of a visit. And what I do also is that we have phone systems, so our office manager can actually listen in to how the front office is answering phones because they're really your first interface with the public. So what I would do is like once a month, I had my office manager would ask, check a phone call from each of the front office people and have 10 questions that she has to answer. Did that receptionist ask the patient how they were referred? Did the receptionist keep them on hold for more than 1 minute? And we had a system on our phones that if someone was on hold for more than 1 minute, the phone would ring back to the receptionist. And then, ask them if they're asked to be put on hold, ask the patient for permission to be put on hold. 10 different questions and make sure the receptionist answer those questions correctly. If they didn't, if they weren't, asking or introducing themselves, if they weren't saying, my name is Mary, welcome, my name is Mary, welcome to Juva Skin and Laser Center. If they weren't starting out the conversation that way, that was also something that our office manager would address with them privately at the end of the day or another time and give them feedback and explain why what they were saying was not the best answer or the best way to approach it. Because, you never know what your front office is doing if you're seeing patients in the back. So always have feedback on, what your front office is doing, what your nurses are doing, what your research people are doing, so that you know that everyone is, really um, towing the line in terms of maintaining the practice ethos, we used to call it. That, it's delivering great service so people are happy. And if they're not happy, asking them to explain why.
I think that's a great reminder, and it's a great, like a huge, it plays a huge part of branding as well. How you treat your customers when they come in, even it starts from your call center. It starts from your receptionist. How to build that culture and whole branding. That's a key to build your branding in a nice way as well. I think this is a great time for a good reminder. Let me share my screen for a moment. Uh,
Hmm.
There you go. Before we get into our registrants' questions, let me share you something exciting. All right. Speaking of digital presence and visibility, that brings me to something I'm really excited to share with everyone because we've talked about the power of online trust, content, and consistency, but it can be overwhelming to know where to start or how to stand out. And I'm going to share something that could truly shape the future of your practice. This comes from Naren Arun Raja, the founder of Business of Aesthetics and CEO of Equa Marketing. They're the main sponsor for tonight's session. As a heartfelt thank you for spending your evening with us, Equa is offering a complimentary one-on-one marketing strategy meeting with Lila Stone. Lila Stone is their marketing expert, and this free meeting is entirely free, right? And here's what makes this more than just a call. Before you even that expert, she or he will spend hours studying your practice, your online presence, your competitors, your local SEO, so she can show up with a deeply personalized insights and a roadmap built just for you. So you see a QR code on your screen right now. Take a moment to scan it and reserve your session. We've also dropped a booking link in the chat as well for your convenience. So I think it's a great way for us and for Equa to be connected with the industry professionals, as well as for you to grow your online presence as well. So this is a small reminder. This is a gift coming from our main sponsor. All right, we've got another question. All right, Doctor. Tanya is asking another question. Thank you for your enthusiasm, Tanya. Right. What device is best for neck skin tightening laxity that is not surgical? What device is best for neck skin tightening laxity that is not surgical?
Well, I think there are a number of different devices that work very nicely for tightening the skin of the neck, particularly. You want something that's not doesn't go too deeply because the neck skin is very thin. Um, you can use lasers. You can resurface with lasers. What we found more recently is that radio frequency devices seem to have a little bit of an edge there. Um, there's less downtime, often no downtime at all, and they're very very effective. Any of these procedures, though, require multiple sessions, I should add. So if you want to go with something that's non-invasive, you may need 4 to 6 treatments to accomplish, significant benefits. If you want one device that works with usually one treatment alone, then you have to go into what's called minimally invasive technology or minimally invasive radio frequency. And that device, I've found one of the devices I found most effective for that is what's called FaceTite, which is a type of radio frequency probe that we do local anesthetic for the area to mess with anesthesia. We make a little incision here, just under the chin, and then we insert the radio frequency probe under the skin, just under the dermis, and emit radio frequency energy. It's bipolar radio frequency, and we found that to really be the most effective. But it does require downtime. People have to wear a Velcro band around their head and neck for about 3 days after. There can be some bruising, but it's a very safe procedure. I mean, you have to be trained to do it. You have to know how to work under the skin. But we found in one treatment that actually works most effectively compared to the non-invasive ones. But, if you're not really interested in going in that direction, or patients really don't want something that's minimally invasive, you can use the non-invasive approach, either with lasers or radio frequency.
Right. Thank you, Doctor, for that clarity. All right, Tanya, thank you for your enthusiasm again and sending us questions. This is the engagement that we want. This is the energy that we want. All right, we've gotten a couple of questions from our registrants. I kept that to the end. So, Doctor, one question is, what is something exciting you're currently working on? Maybe a new study, treatment, or project that you're particularly passionate about?
Well, one of the studies we've been doing involves using a new type of combination filler. It's I can't really mention exactly combination of what, but it's two different fillers in one syringe. And I think that's going to be a very exciting new approach. I think you have to wait till it comes out. Um, but that can be the new thing in terms of fillers because it has an immediate effect and then seems to even last longer than current fillers.
All right, amazing. And we've got another question. Right. From your experience, what's one change you have seen in patient expectations over the last few years that really surprised you? From your experience, what's one change you've seen in patient expectations over the last few years that really surprised you?
Well, I must say, I was a little bit surprised when younger and younger patients started coming in for not, you know, serious cosmetic treatments, but sort of mild ones like toxins or fillers. And that's what we call prejuvenation, the prejuvenation approach. I was a little bit surprised, but not that surprised because, I realized that, over the years of just seeing how patients respond to these treatments, that if you start younger with, the non-invasive procedures or just the very mild, modest ones, you probably don't need to have the more aggressive or even surgical procedures later on in life. So, now we see, patients in their 20s or 30s who come in and see they're getting some wrinkles in their frown lines or in their forehead, or, people who have been going to sun tanning parlors when they were teenagers, getting sunspots on their chest, or women getting, fine wrinkles in the décolleté area. They're coming in for treatments now. And we can treat them with very, mild, technologies, using toxins to treat the frown lines or the forehead lines, or using a laser or radiofrequency device for looser skin, or another type of laser. There are a variety of different lasers that'll treat sunspots. And those are a little bit surprising, but actually it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because it probably will let them not have to use more aggressive procedures later on.
All
And
right.
they're also, I should mention, then they also become educated about how to take care of their skin so they don't get further sun damage and more wrinkles and sunspots and loose and lax skin. So it educates them initially, whereas if they hadn't come in until they really saw deep lines in their 40s or 50s, they probably could have been, a lot better off had they started learning about it when they were a lot younger.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for these comprehensive answers, Doctor. What an incredible evening this has been. I have very final question to ask from you. If you could give one piece of advice to a young aesthetic provider just starting out today, what would it be?
Well, like we discussed earlier, Che, whatever technology or whatever approach you want to take, start with one device or one, particular treatment and become an expert at it. Do one at a time. Don't try to become an expert at five different things at the same time, because you'll end up not being an expert at any of them. So start and make sure you learn properly, take the courses, go to practitioners who are experienced there, and become an expert in one thing. And then once you are, and then when you feel that you are, practice on your family or your staff before you go out and treat patients. That's what we've always done. And our patients, our family and friends often appreciate it because they got free treatments, but also you got a little more experience before you went out and started treating paying patients who would not appreciate it if they didn't get, any results or they had a side effect. So I think that's really important starting out. You know, understand what your clientele will be, know, who your patients will be, so you can address, pick out the right technology so you'll get busy pretty quickly. If you pick out the wrong technology for your population of patients and not going to come in asking for it or not going to be appropriate for it, you spend a lot of money on that technology and you have patients who are not asking for it. So you're not benefiting your patients and you're probably losing money at the same time.
All right. Amazing. I'd like to do that final reminder, getting back to square one, something you mentioned at the very beginning of the session. Treat your practice like a service. I loved it.
Mhm.
That
We
should
always
be
treat our
the
patient. I always tell my staff, we are like a high-end hotel, and we want to treat our patients like they would treat their guests. Not necessarily like family, but like their guests. Yet they're guests in your house, your office. You have to treat them really well. And then they will appreciate it and come back and also tell their friends and family about you.
All right, amazing. Just to highlight a few things that I loved from the conversation, you need to be an expert to brand yourself out there. So if you want to educate people, if you want to show that you know the things, you need to do the homework and you need to be that expert. To be that expert, associate experts, go to international meetings, conferences, associate people who know the subject, who are expert in this field, and be updated with the technology and innovations and with recent trends and all of that. And finally, build that trust from your clientele, build that, be transparent and build that trust and build that rapport. Then whatever the information around them, they will come to you trusting you. So thank you so much for this wonderful discussion, doctor. This has been amazing. We've heard inspiring practical strategies and fresh perspectives that can truly reshape the way you grow and lead an aesthetic practice. So session like this remind us that aesthetic is not just about beautiful results, it's about smart growth, balance, and creating legacy of care and confidence for every patient you serve. So a heartfelt thank you to you, Dr. Bruce Katz, for being here.
Mhm. My
Um,
pleasure.
you didn't just share information tonight, you sparked inspiration, I guess, giving us clarity and courage and practical steps that we can put to work right away. And to our amazing audience, you are the reason we do this. Your willingness to show up, learn, and engage is what strengthens this community. So we are deeply grateful for your energy and presence tonight. So, Dr. Katz, we'd like for you to stay for just a couple of minutes after the session so we can get your quick feedback as well. And to our wonderful audience, a quick reminder to fill out the feedback surveys as you exit. So, thank you so much for joining us and for thriving with us tonight. See you again at the next Business of Aesthetics event. Until then, take care.